What if your constant giving, your need to be perfect, and your fear of being alone were all signs of a forgotten self crying out from the shadows? Most women, at some point in their journey, encounter a silent ache, a hollow echo within that whispers of connection unfulfilled, of a self diminished by the insistent demands of the external world. It is a yearning, profound and often unacknowledged, for a sanctuary not found in the arms of another, but within the quietude of their own being. This longing often arises from a deep-seated relational wound, a historical tapestry woven with threads of perceived inadequacy or conditional love. Perhaps it began in the formative years, where the feminine spirit, vibrant and intuitive, found itself constantly negotiating for space and validation in a world that prioritized outward achievement over inner harmony. The inherent need for acceptance, the very human desire to be seen and cherished, can inadvertently lead one down a path where self-worth becomes inextricably linked to the reflection in another's gaze. When that gaze falters, or when its light proves too dim to truly illuminate one's essence, a profound sense of loneliness settles in, even amidst the most crowded of rooms. This is not merely the absence of companionship, but the gnawing emptiness of a self that has forgotten its own inherent value, its own sacred rhythm. It is a pain born of losing oneself in the intricate dance of pleasing, perfecting, and performing, until the authentic self, the one that yearns for solitude's tender embrace, is but a faint whisper on the wind. Elara had always been the sun, radiating warmth and light into every corner of her world. From a young age, her laughter was the melody that filled her family home, her kindness the balm that soothed every minor squabble. She was the one who listened intently, who offered comfort without hesitation, who always knew the right words to say. This innate generosity, however, became a double-edged sword. Her empathy, once a pure expression of her spirit, slowly morphed into an unconscious burden. She absorbed the emotional currents of those around her, a sponge soaking up every ripple of joy and every wave of sorrow, until her own wellspring of feeling began to run dry. Her parents, loving but perhaps subtly overbearing, had often praised her selflessness, reinforcing the notion that her value lay in her ability to cater to the needs of others. "Elara, you're such a good girl for helping your brother," her mother would say, or, "Your father truly appreciates how you always put his needs first." These seemingly innocuous remarks, delivered with affection, unknowingly laid the groundwork for a profound pattern of self-abandonment. As she blossomed into a young woman, Elara found herself drawn to relationships that mirrored this dynamic. Her first serious boyfriend, Julian, was a charismatic artist, brilliant but volatile. He burned with an intense creative fire, often plunging into fits of despair or soaring into manic highs. Elara instinctively became his anchor, his steady presence. She soothed his anxieties, celebrated his triumphs, and endured his darkest moods, all while her own aspirations and needs receded into the background. She justified it, of course. "He's a genius," she'd tell her friends. "He just needs someone to understand him." Yet, with each artistic triumph of his, a subtle erosion occurred within her. Her own sketches, once vibrant with promise, lay forgotten in a dusty drawer. Her dreams of studying art history, once so vivid, were shelved in favor of supporting his volatile career. There was a particular evening, etched sharply in her memory, when Julian had raged about a scathing review of his latest exhibition. He had hurled a ceramic mug across the room, shattering it against the wall, then collapsed onto the floor, weeping inconsolably. Elara, without a thought for her own fear, knelt beside him, holding him, whispering reassurances, until the storm within him subsided. As he eventually drifted to sleep in her arms, she found herself staring at the jagged shards of the mug, a cold dread seeping into her bones. The room was silent save for his soft breathing, and in that silence, a terrifying question surfaced. Who was she, without him to fix? The relationship with Julian eventually imploded, not with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing whimper. He found a new muse, a younger, more vivacious artist who echoed his artistic intensity in a way Elara, in her exhausted selflessness, no longer could. The breakup left her utterly adrift. The void Julian left was not merely his physical absence, but the sudden, terrifying lack of a role to play. She had been the nurturer, the fixer, the selfless support system, and now, without that function, she felt like a hollow shell. Her friends, seeing her devastation, rallied around her. They offered distractions, outings, new dating app suggestions. But their well-meaning efforts only highlighted the deep chasm within her. She went through the motions, laughing at jokes she didn't truly find funny, nodding along to stories that didn't resonate. Her spirit, however, remained stubbornly unengaged. One rainy afternoon, weeks after the breakup, Elara found herself aimlessly wandering through a dusty antique shop. A small, intricately carved wooden box caught her eye. It was old, worn smooth by countless hands, its surface bearing faint traces of what might have once been vibrant paint. As she held it, a faint scent of old cedar and something else, something indefinable and ancient, wafted up. It felt strangely comforting, a tangible piece of history that had withstood the passage of time. She bought it, not knowing why, and took it home. That evening, as the rain drummed against her windowpane, she sat on her bed, the wooden box resting in her lap. Her phone buzzed with a message from a friend, suggesting a night out, but for the first time in a long time, the urge to respond, to engage, felt entirely absent. Instead, she opened the box. Inside, it was empty, yet, as she gazed into its hollow interior, a peculiar sense of peace settled over her. It was a space utterly devoid of expectation or demand. Simply was. In that moment, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift occurred within her. It wasn't a grand revelation, but a gentle nudge, a quiet invitation. The emptiness of the box, rather than feeling desolate, felt like a fertile void, a space waiting to be filled, not by another's needs, but by her own nascent desires. The next few weeks became a subtle, almost clandestine rebellion. She began to say no to invitations that felt draining, not with anger, but with a quiet resolve. She started taking long walks alone, not with a destination in mind, but simply to feel the air on her skin, to observe the shifting patterns of light and shadow. She revisited her forgotten sketchbook, not with the pressure of creating a masterpiece, but with the simple joy of pencil on paper. These were small acts, barely noticeable to those around her, but to Elara, they were monumental. Each solitary moment was a brick in the foundation of her new sanctuary. She found herself drawn to books on psychology, particularly the works of Carl Jung, whose ideas on the shadow and individuation resonated deeply. She began to understand that the constant outward focus, the relentless pursuit of external validation, had kept her from confronting her own unacknowledged needs, her own suppressed desires, her shadow. The pain of the breakup, initially crippling, now felt like a catalyst, a harsh but necessary force that had stripped away the layers of false self, revealing the fragile, authentic core beneath. She was beginning the arduous but liberating journey of individuation, a process of becoming the unique, whole self she was always meant to be. The quiet yearning, once a source of emptiness, was slowly transforming into a profound appreciation for solitude, not as a punishment, but as a sacred space for self-discovery. The archetypal figure Elara embodies is that of the sacrificing nymph, a common psychological pattern in women where the inherent feminine urge to nurture and connect is distorted into a relentless self-sacrifice. This archetype, often conditioned by societal expectations and familial dynamics, finds her identity primarily in her utility to others, leading to a profound neglect of her own emotional and psychological needs. Her internal landscape becomes a vast, accommodating space for the projections of others, while her authentic self, her unique desires and aspirations, are relegated to the shadowy corners of her unconscious. The theme that resonates throughout her journey is the reclamation of the sovereign self through the crucible of loss. It is a testament to the profound truth that sometimes the greatest external disruptions serve as the most potent internal catalysts. To you, dear viewer, who may recognize echoes of Elara's journey in your own life, understand this. Your inherent worth is not contingent upon your ability to soothe another's anxieties or fulfill another's expectations. The constant pursuit of external validation is a Sisyphean task, a boulder eternally rolling back down the hill. Your capacity for empathy, a beautiful and powerful aspect of your feminine spirit, must be tempered with discerning boundaries. Begin the sacred work of turning inward. Ask yourself with unflinching honesty, what parts of me have I sacrificed at the altar of another's comfort? What desires have I silenced? Embrace the stillness, for it is within this quietude that the true answers reside. Like the ancient Stoics, Seneca and Marcus Aurelius understood, inner peace is not found in the chaotic dance of external circumstances, but in the unwavering strength of your inner citadel. Do not shy away from the discomfort that accompanies this introspection. It is the necessary shadow work that illuminates the path to your authentic power. Your solitude is not a void to be filled, but a fertile ground for your rebirth, a sacred space where the soul's yearning finds its deepest, most profound fulfillment. Cultivate it, cherish it, and watch as your inner landscape blossoms into a vibrant testament to your rediscovered self. Has this ever happened to you, where the very foundation of your self-worth feels inextricably linked to the perception of others, particularly within the confines of a romantic partnership? It is a subtle but insidious trap, one that ensnares countless women in a dance of constant performance and appeasement. This second common aspect of the soul's yearning for solitude often emerges from a deep-seated fear of abandonment, a primal terror that if one ceases to be useful, beautiful, or agreeable, one will simply cease to be loved. This fear can be a legacy, passed down through generations, or cultivated in the tender soil of early relationships where love was presented as a conditional gift, earned through specific behaviors rather than given as an inherent right. When this operates unconsciously, a woman can find herself in a relationship dynamic where her partner's approval becomes the primary barometer of her own value. Every choice, every word, every gesture is filtered through the lens of how it will be received, how it will maintain the delicate equilibrium of affection. The authentic self, with its messy edges and inconvenient truths, is gradually suppressed, replaced by a curated version designed to elicit positive regard. This perpetual state of vigilance and self-editing is exhausting, draining the spirit and leaving behind a profound sense of emotional depletion. The solitude, in this context, becomes not just a desire, but an urgent psychological necessity, a desperate plea from the silenced self for a space where it can simply be, unfettered by the relentless gaze of another's expectations. Seraphina had always possessed an incandescent beauty, a grace that turned heads and drew admiration like moths to a flame. From her earliest memories, this external validation had been her currency, her shield against the anxieties of a world that often felt chaotic and unpredictable. Her mother, a former beauty queen, had meticulously cultivated Seraphina's appearance, praising her flawless complexion and elegant posture, subtly reinforcing the unspoken rule that her outward perfection was paramount. This early conditioning led Seraphina to believe that her worth was intrinsically tied to the admiring glances she received, the compliments whispered in her wake. She learned, with the keen intuition of a child, that beauty opened doors, softened resistance, and guaranteed a certain level of acceptance. When she met Marcus, a powerful and successful entrepreneur, it felt like the culmination of everything she had unconsciously been striving for. He was utterly captivated by her, showering her with lavish gifts, extravagant trips, and effusive praise. He adored her beauty, her charm, her effortless elegance. Seraphina, in turn, basked in his adoration, feeling seen and desired in a way she never had before. His gaze became her mirror, reflecting back a dazzling image of herself that felt endlessly validating. Yet, beneath the glittering surface of their life together, a subtle erosion began. Marcus, while outwardly doting, possessed an almost obsessive need for control. He dictated her wardrobe, gently suggested which friends she should spend time with, and subtly discouraged her burgeoning interest in photography, dismissing it as a frivolous hobby. His control was rarely overt, cloaked instead in a veneer of concern and protection. "Darling," he would say, stroking her hair, "I just want what's best for you. These late nights with your camera aren't good for your complexion." Or, That dress, while lovely, might be a bit too provocative for this event. You want to maintain a certain image, don't you? Seraphina initially complied without question. After all, he loved her, didn't he? His suggestions felt like extensions of his care, proof of his devotion. Her life became a carefully curated performance, each day a meticulous effort to embody the woman Marcus admired. She spent hours on her appearance, chose her words carefully, and stifled her own opinions if they diverged too sharply from his. Her vibrant laugh, once unrestrained, became a softer, more controlled ripple. Her artistic eye, once keen and observant, dulled with disuse. There was a particular incident that lingered in her mind like a sharp shard of glass. They were at a high-profile charity gala, and Seraphina, emboldened by a few glasses of champagne, engaged in a spirited debate with an art critic about a controversial exhibit. She felt alive, articulate, her mind sparking with genuine passion. But when she glanced at Marcus, his face was a mask of cold disapproval. Later that night, he remained silent, his withdrawal a chilling punishment. The next morning, he calmly informed her that her enthusiasm had been unbecoming and embarrassing. His words, delivered without anger but with a devastating finality, stripped her of her voice. From that moment on, she became even more vigilant, policing her every impulse, terrified of invoking his silent displeasure. The fear of losing his affection, of being cast out from the gilded cage he had built around her, became her constant companion. She existed in a state of perpetual anxiety, a beautiful bird with clipped wings, singing only the songs he approved of. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a quiet internal collapse. Marcus had organized a surprise birthday trip for her, a lavish getaway to a secluded island resort. On the surface, it was idyllic. Pristine beaches, gourmet meals, endless pampering. Yet, as Seraphina lay beside the infinity pool, gazing out at the turquoise sea, a profound emptiness washed over her. She was surrounded by luxury, by the tangible proof of Marcus's love, but she felt utterly invisible. Her mind, usually preoccupied with anticipating his next desire, was strangely still. In that stillness, a single, devastating thought crystallized. She no longer knew who she was. The woman Marcus adored was a construct, a beautiful facade, and the real Seraphina, with her messy emotions, her unconventional thoughts, her yearning for artistic expression, had been suffocated into oblivion. She remembered a phrase from a forgotten poem, the soul's yearning for its native sky. She yearned for her own sky, unmarred by the clouds of another's expectations. That night, for the first time in years, she couldn't sleep. She slipped out of bed, leaving Marcus slumbering peacefully, and walked along the moonlit beach. The waves whispered secrets against the shore, a primal rhythm that seemed to awaken something ancient within her. She thought of the stories of women who had found strength in adversity, of the quiet courage it took to reclaim one's own narrative. She thought of her photography, the forgotten lens through which she once saw the world with unique clarity. A desperate, almost primal urge to see again, to feel again, surged through her. This was her shadow demanding to be seen, the parts of herself she had repressed in her desperate need for acceptance. It was a harrowing, yet strangely liberating, realization. The beautiful prison she had built for herself, brick by brick, was now unbearable. She understood, with a clarity that stung, that the only way to find her way back to herself was to dismantle it, even if it meant facing the terrifying prospect of true solitude. This burgeoning awareness was the beginning of her journey towards individuation, a painful but necessary disentanglement from the ego projection of Marcus, whose need for control was a reflection of his own insecurities. Seraphina was ready to face the void, armed only with the fragile hope of rediscovering her authentic self. Seraphina embodies the mirrored maiden archetype, a woman whose identity becomes so intertwined with the reflection in another's eyes that her own inner light dims. Her narrative explores the insidious nature of conditional love and the profound psychological damage inflicted when self-worth is outsourced to external validation. The theme that emerges is the liberation found in dismantling the gilded cage of perceived perfection. It highlights the crucial distinction between being desired and being seen, a distinction often blurred in relationships where one partner's identity is absorbed by the other. To you, who might feel the chilling echo of Seraphina's experience, understand that your inherent value is not a garment to be worn or discarded based on another's fleeting approval. It is an unshakable truth, woven into the very fabric of your being. The constant pursuit of perfection to appease another is a form of self-betrayal, a slow surrender of your vibrant essence. Recognize the subtle tactics of control, the gentle suggestions that chip away at your autonomy. These are often the shadows of another's own insecurities, projected onto you. Your response is not to absorb them, but to recognize them for what they are, not a reflection of your inadequacy, but a distortion of their own unaddressed fears. Learn to listen to the whispers of your own soul, the parts of you that yearn for authentic expression, even if they are deemed unbecoming by external standards. This is the essence of individuation, the courageous journey of aligning with your true self, regardless of external pressures. Draw strength from the philosophical insights of Stoicism, understanding that your inner peace is not dependent on the whims of others, but on your own unwavering self-regard. Your solitude, far from being a lonely void, is the sacred crucible where your authentic self can be forged anew, unburdened by the weight of external expectations. It is the space where you reclaim your power, your voice, and your undeniable right to simply be. What would you think if I told you that the deepest yearning for solitude often arises not from external pressures or relational wounds, but from an innate, almost spiritual hunger for self-reunion? This third, profound dimension of the soul's call for sacred space speaks to a pervasive sense of disconnect from one's own inner wisdom, a feeling of being adrift from the authentic core of one's being. In a world saturated with external stimuli, with the relentless hum of social media, the clamor of expectations, and the constant pressure to be outwardly productive, the quiet voice of the inner self can be easily drowned out. This isn't about escaping pain, but about seeking a deeper, more profound truth that lies dormant beneath the surface of everyday life. It's the feeling that despite having all the outward markers of success or connection, a fundamental piece is missing, an elusive sense of belonging not to a group or a partner, but to oneself. This unfulfilled longing manifests as a subtle restlessness, a sense that something vital is being overlooked, a quiet urgency to pause, reflect, and rediscover the profound inner landscape that holds the keys to true peace and purpose. It is a call to individuation at its most profound level, a deep invitation to journey inward and integrate all facets of the self, not merely as a response to trauma, but as an act of courageous self-becoming. Anya had always been a seeker, though for many years, she didn't quite know what she was seeking. Her life, by all outward appearances, was enviable. She was a successful architect, her designs celebrated for their innovative blend of form and function. She had a close-knit circle of friends, a vibrant social life, and a string of engaging, if fleeting, romantic relationships. Yet, beneath the polished facade, Anya felt a persistent, almost gnawing sense of dissatisfaction, a quiet discontent that no amount of professional achievement or social engagement could truly quell. It was as if she was perpetually chasing a feeling she could never quite grasp, a missing piece that eluded her no matter how hard she worked or how widely she traveled. She would throw herself into projects with an almost manic intensity, working late into the night, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in her field. The brief exhilaration of completing a complex design, however, would quickly dissipate, leaving her with the same familiar emptiness. She would then pivot to her social life, filling her evenings and weekends with lively dinners, spontaneous road trips, and deep conversations with friends. These interactions were genuine, filled with laughter and connection. But even in the midst of genuine camaraderie, Anya would occasionally feel a strange detachment, as if she were observing her own life from a slight distance, an actor playing a well-rehearsed role. Her romantic relationships, while often passionate, never seemed to deepen beyond a certain point. There was always an invisible wall, a subtle barrier she couldn't quite articulate. She yearned for profound intimacy, a connection that went beyond the superficial. Yet she inadvertently pushed it away, retreating at the first sign of emotional vulnerability. This pattern, a relentless cycle of outward pursuit and inner emptiness, began to take its toll. Sleep became elusive, her once sharp focus blurred by an underlying anxiety she couldn't name. She started to experience moments of intense emotional overwhelm, sudden waves of sadness or frustration that seemed to come from nowhere, leaving her shaken and confused. She found herself increasingly restless, unable to settle, constantly searching for the next distraction, the next goal, the next experience that promised to fill the void. This was the voice of her anima speaking, the unconscious feminine principle within her, neglected and unheard, signaling a profound imbalance. Her frantic external activity was a manifestation of her ego's desperate attempt to avoid the deeper, more spiritual work of inner integration. One particularly grueling week, after delivering a major project, Anya felt a profound sense of exhaustion that went beyond physical fatigue. It was a weariness of the soul, a profound disenchantment with the relentless chase. She found herself sitting in her impeccably designed apartment, surrounded by all the trappings of success, and burst into tears. They weren't tears of sadness, not exactly, but tears of release, of a long-suppressed longing finally breaking through the dam of her conscious resistance. In that moment of raw vulnerability, a single, clear thought emerged. She needed to stop. She needed to stop chasing, stop doing, stop performing. She needed to just be. This moment of profound clarity became her turning point. Anya, usually a whirlwind of activity, made a deliberate choice to embrace stillness. She canceled her weekend plans, turned off her phone, and simply allowed herself to exist within the quietude of her own home. The initial hours were agonizing. Her mind, accustomed to constant stimulation, rebelled, bombarding her with anxieties, to-do lists, and the uncomfortable whispers of her own unacknowledged fears. This was her shadow rising, demanding attention, the parts of herself she had suppressed in her pursuit of external validation. But Anya, inspired by a fleeting memory of a philosophy class in college where Stoic principles were discussed, chose to simply observe these thoughts without engaging. She practiced a form of radical acceptance, allowing the discomfort to simply be, without judgment or resistance. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, a new sensation began to emerge. It was a subtle shift, like the quiet turning of the earth. The frantic mental chatter began to subside, replaced by a gentle hum of inner awareness. She noticed the way the afternoon light fell across her living room floor, the intricate patterns of dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. She heard the distant chirping of birds, the gentle rustle of leaves outside her window. These small, sensory details, usually lost in the cacophony of her mind, now resonated with a quiet beauty. She began to journal, not about her achievements or her anxieties, but about the fleeting sensations of her inner world, the subtle shifts in her emotional landscape. She rediscovered her love for reading, not self-help books or industry reports, but poetry and ancient myths, narratives that spoke to the deeper, symbolic truths of the human experience. She started meditating, not striving for enlightenment, but simply for the quiet space it offered. In this profound stillness, she began to hear the whispers of her own intuition, the gentle guidance of her authentic self, long buried beneath layers of external noise. The missing piece wasn't external at all. It was the conscious connection to her own vast and abundant inner world, the process of individuation unfolding, not as a reaction to pain, but as a deliberate act of sovereign self-discovery. Her solitude became the sacred ground where her scattered fragments began to coalesce, where the soul's yearning finally found its home within itself. Anya embodies the restless seeker archetype, a woman driven by an unconscious longing for wholeness, often expressed through relentless external achievement and social engagement. Her story illuminates the profound spiritual hunger that arises when the inherent connection to one's inner self is neglected amidst the clamor of modern life. The theme that resonates through her journey is the serenity found in profound self-reunion through intentional stillness. It highlights that true fulfillment is not found in external acquisition, but in the courageous act of turning inward and integrating the multifaceted aspects of the self, particularly the previously unacknowledged shadow. To you, dear soul, who might recognize the restless current within Anya's narrative, understand that the deepest satisfaction often lies not in the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next adventure, but in the profound peace of your own company. The constant pursuit of external validation, of filling every moment with activity, is often a subconscious avoidance of the powerful truths waiting to be discovered within your own stillness. Your intuition, your deepest wisdom, speaks in whispers, not shouts, and it can only be heard when you quiet the external noise. Embrace the profound wisdom of Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong process of integrating your conscious and unconscious self into a unique, coherent whole. This is not a journey to be rushed, but savored in the quiet moments of introspection. Learn to be an observer of your own thoughts, as the Stoics taught, letting them pass without attachment or judgment. Your solitude is not an empty space to be feared, but a rich, fertile sanctuary where your authentic self can blossom. Cultivate positive habits that foster this inner connection. Whether it's walking in nature, practicing yoga, meditating, or simply sitting in quiet contemplation. These are not mere activities, but acts of profound self-love, pathways to reconnecting with your innermost being. The strength you seek, the peace you crave, lies within you, waiting to be rediscovered. Trust in this process of inner transformation. Allow stillness to be your guide, your sanctuary, and your most profound source of power. Like the resilient earth, you hold within you the capacity for profound rebirth. Let go of the need for external validation, for it is in the quiet surrender to your own inner landscape that true emotional release occurs. The power of stillness will transform you, catalyzing positive changes and inspiring positive actions. Embrace this journey, for your inner strength is boundless. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and share this video with others to spread positive values in life. Thank you for listening. The end.